this idea of Christianity is the idea that truly set the captives free, spiritually and physically.
Let me fan you. Go ahead. I don't even know what that was, but I'll fan you for real. You're about to make me do a shout up in here. All I need is an organ. Come on.
Can you expound on it more about Muslims taking slaves? This is new to her.
I didn't realize this.
I didn't realize this. So maybe talk a little bit more about that.
This is one of the things that sort of frustrates me. We always hear about the Atlantic slave trade, slaves put on ships, sent across the Atlantic. But what we don't hear about is the slave trade that the Muslims had, where they would take slaves and they would march them across the Sahara Desert. And by some accounts, 1 and 2 of them died along the way. There were just as many, as not more, Christians died going to Muslim countries than died going across the Middle Passage. And that's what we don't hear about a lot.
You can literally just Google map Muslim slave trade.
Yeah.
And what you'll see is that there's, if you were to, go basically from the top of the Horn of Africa and kind of split it across, they would literally march people through a lot of Africa into, the more Muslim territories of the Middle East. But not only there's also routes that led into other places in Europe. The Muslim slave trade killed many more Africans than the transatlantic slave trade. Am I saying that to say the transatlantic slave, it's not that bad? No, I'm not saying that. No, I'm not trying to minimize it.
Yeah.
But we also need to keep in perspective the fact that, one, Christianity itself as a religion did not invent slavery. Christianity as a religion does not condone slavery. I would not say that just because some Christians may have upheld slavery and participated in that our religion itself condones those things. I think that also should be threaded through a little bit more.
I believe Christianity is what ended slavery.
Go ahead and preach.
And here's my point. Like we mentioned before, I touched on slavery has always existed. It has existed since the beginning of mankind. It is a stronger nation overtaking a weaker nation. It's always existed, it's existed in Europe, it's existed in Africa, it's existed in Asia, it's existed in the Americas before the first white man came here. Like I said, it has always existed. But what hasn't existed is something weird happened in the 1700s. The abolitionist movement. Now, at the heart of the abolitionist movement was this idea that man was made in the image of God, that man had value because he was man. It started with the Quakers, who were the first ones to outlaw having slaves. So this idea caught on. This idea that man is more than just whatever we decide that man is, that there's something inherently spiritual about man, that man has some type of worth that we can't take away from another human being. So this is what actually grew the abolitionist movement. And the abolitionist movement is what actually fostered the end of slavery as we know it around the world. And to be honest with you, we really want to go there.
I'm here for it. Let's go.
To be honest with you, if it were not for the colonialists, because the colonialists were the ones, the British and stuff was the ones who, started the abolitionist movement, because they had colonies in Africa. When they shut down slavery in Britain, they also shut down slavery in Africa. So slavery would probably still be going on in Africa if it were not for these countries becoming colonies that were under sort of the influence of Britain. The idea that Christianity is a slave religion is sort of the opposite of what it was. If it wasn't for Christianity, we borrow from Christian ideas all the time, and we don't even realize this idea that man is made in the image of God. This idea that man is spiritual. This idea that man has worth beyond what people give it. This is a uniquely Christian idea. You don't find this idea in Islam. You don't find this idea in atheism. That man is somehow above all the creation. That man is made in the image of someone who's the creator of the universe. But only in Christianity do we have that. And when Christians who were involved in the slave trade started to realize this, they started to realize that slavery itself was wrong, not just for me, but for everyone. To the point where the British Navy used their naval authority to capture ships, to sink ships. They brought in other nations who also did the same thing. They patrolled off the coast of Africa and took ships that were involved in the slave trade. They overthrew African kings who would not give up the slave trade, because there were a lot of African kings who did not want to give up the slave trade. They were deeply invested in the slave trade. So this idea of Christianity is the idea that truly set the captives free, spiritually and physically.
Let me fan you. Go ahead. I don't even know what that was, but I'm gonna fan you for you. You're about to make me do a shout up in here. All I need is an organ. Come on. Won't he do it? Yes. But that's so good. But what is, and to your point, what's frustrating is when we only hear one side of this conversation, especially in this current race-focused narrative of, is Christianity the white man's religion? Should we be ashamed of Christianity? Are we, participating in the religion of our oppressors and things like that? No, I'm not. Because the religion of those who upheld slavery, especially those who use things like the slave Bible and twisted the scriptures to be able to support slavery, I would argue were not participating in true Christianity. Right. So that's a good word.